Now, I see that's the other problem. I don't know which is the trap. Is the Epstein stuff the trap? Like, is that the distraction? Or is ICE the distraction? Or are they both a distraction and they're just trying to keep us hating each other?
All that and more on the
Yeah,
newest episode of Dad Influence.
that's
So,
right.
guys, we've had a lot of happen, and since we last released the episode, interestingly, I can actually pull this up if you guys want to see. We recorded that episode on my birthday, January 20th.
Man,
And
happy
I
birthday. I didn't
will,
know.
yeah, actually, funnily enough, we can add this to the stage, and you can see the date right here is January 26th.
Called
And
him. He
exactly the day
he did it.
after it happened,
We're so
we
smart.
called that stuff. So I figure we go ahead and take our victory lap on that
Little pat on the back.
because that is exactly what we said should be done. But on that like tip, I think actually there's something to be said about like the whole like praxeology of what I call the praxeology of TDS. So like when you're trying to play this game of politics, right? Anything you do is going to have a reaction to it, right? And you have to predict where the smarter places to go, right? So this is kind of the thing. If you want to get deportations, you have to go in a specific order if you want to get the most done, right?
Mm, sure.
Otherwise, you do as your great brother would call scaring the hose.
Don't want
So
to scare the hose.
the normies, the regular, everyday folks that don't pay attention to politics a whole lot, if they see masked men running around beating the hell out of random citizens, that they're obviously going to go, whoa, 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 what are we doing? What are we doing?
Right.
So like this is a good point here. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip to kind of drive the point home that we were kind of making here.
I got no audio.
You know what? Maybe I need to play. Here, let's see if I got a. uh, Sometimes when you're doing this, guys, and you're half retarded. All right, here we go.
All right.
Here's the clip.
I still got nothing. I'm not hearing it.
You can't hear that?
Uh-uh. I can't see it
What am I
either.
doing wrong?
I don't know. It's not on the screen either.
Maybe because I'm, again, extra retarded. We're going to have to cut a lot of this out,
Three
maybe.
quarters? Three quarters? You have very funny retardation.
I just realized I did not put it up on the fucking screen. All right, here we go. Let's add to stage.
There we go.
That'll do it. All right,
Nice.
so here's the clip.
An effort to deport legal residents who are criticizing Israel. So he immediately took this moment where people were pretty much on his side and went, let me do this in the most controversial way on the most controversial issue that will turn a whole lot of people off and doesn't move the needle one way or the other in terms of demographics. And then the second thing he did, Rob, if you remember this, was he announced we won't be doing mass deportations. I mean, the way Donald Trump said it was something like, in the Trumpian way, we got great people in hospitality and farming. They've been here 10, 20 years. I mean, AKA, in other words, if you need the political translation to that, Donald Trump didn't just like pick farming and hospitality as the only things that matter. In other words, Rob, translation, big business doesn't want this. Pretty big dynamic.
So I think that's kind of an interesting point that a lot of folks that support this are kind of missing. That like if you go to the praxeology, right, the reaction, the way that this is being done is in a way that's not meant to actually, achieve what the people who voted for these deportations are doing. It seems to be to sabotage the idea of it even being possible. So like I said, this the same thing about Doge. If you go and
Mhm.
you look at Doge, there was a lot done, there was a lot of ruckus made about it, and it mostly seemed to troll the left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And And then when we get all said and done, nothing actually ever happens, and then they declare it impossible to actually cut any waste from the government.
Right.
And that seems to be the way this is going. A lot of these moneyed interests and friends of Donald Trump don't want to see this cheap labor go away. Donald Trump himself is a hotel empire, and he doesn't want to see that cheap labor go away.
Hmm.
So the the thing about this is, if you actually look at the statistics that they have, they seem to be padded by people that they've rounded up out of prisons and then deported to
Yeah.
try to say, hey, look at all these criminals that we got out, which is identical to how Obama did it too. When he was like, look at all these
Right.
criminals we got. That's
It's
identical
a
to how he did it.
they're trading, like they just pass prisoners back and forth every 4 years to make it seem, but they keep that working class, that I call it slave labor at this point. Like they're working for nothing, like not enough to live on in America for sure. And it's, I think I sent you that video. Maybe I have it on my phone. I saved it, but it's essentially slavery, like in a different format, packaged differently, and they use us to fight over whether or not we should have slaves. We're still fighting over it. I mean, it's indentured servitude to a degree, I think. And I don't think anybody wants it. Like, we don't want them to suffer. We just don't want them here so that they're not being slaves to us. Like, you know, cleaning hotel rooms is a job for a high school kid in America to get some money and, like, or whatever. Like, it's not a job for, a 45-year-old man who's just trying to feed his family. Like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, the thing about the immigration issue to me is that, like, it's not really talked about in a very honest way.
Yeah.
Is that it's an opportunity cost if you look at it this way. Like, there's two ways that you can kind of run a society, and one of them is where you have a robust safety net made to support people who are on the lowest rungs of society when they need help. And another way is you can say, well, it's sink or swim, and anybody who can come here and succeed should come here and succeed. That's the two models that you can run. And if we're just being honest and looking at the numbers and the data, the best way to run is the latter, like actually open borders, but we get rid of the social safety net. That's the highest and quickest growth that you've seen in the country's history.
Right.
What people don't realize about immigration is that jobs exist to take care of the population that you have. So the more population that you have, the more jobs that will exist. Like that, it's that simple. Like, these people aren't doing nothing for no reason.
Right.
There's a reason, like, New York City has more jobs than
Sure.
Huntsville, Alabama,
Yeah.
because it's a bigger city with a greater population and more people that need to be taken care of. The McDonald's has more employees in New York City, and the reason being is it takes more care of more people. So that's obvious, but the thing about it, the thing that's not really talked about is that if you chain a social welfare system to that, then you create an incentive to come here but not to work at the same
Yeah.
time. So you don't have that. You have a drain on the system rather than a economic boom.
That's
So
an
like I said,
interesting, yeah,
it's more
they don't
nuanced
play
than
well together.
people. Right. It's just
Yeah.
those two systems clash. That's why if you go and you look, there's no socialist country on the planet that has open immigration.
Yeah.
Every one of them have some of
Yeah.
the strictest immigration that you ever see anywhere. You have to go through hella hoops just to become a citizen in any socialist country. And that's the reason why, is
Yeah.
because, like I said, you can't just have people coming in and sitting on the system.
That's yeah, that's smart. I mean, you wanna keep, you're behooved at that point to keep, it's kinda like my work, we have like when I first started there, we had like a bonus pool, right? And there were like maybe 16 people in the bonus pool. So our nut was like pretty small to getting even a bottom tier bonus. And now there's like 40 people in the bonus pool, and we have to clear a ton of money for the month in order to even get the minimal bonus, and forget about the top tier. And it's, the pool is so much bigger that your nut is like way higher. So for a socialist country who has, call it the bonus pool, like, hey, you're a citizen here, so we're going to pay for your health care. If something goes wrong, you break your leg or whatever, you're not going to have to pay for that. If you're out of work, we can cover your groceries for a few months, or, whatever it is. Then you're going to want to keep that pool really small so that your overhead's not crazy. So that totally makes sense, like logically. And I think you're right. I think that too, it's either you got to do like sink or swim, or we can float you where you need it. But, those two things playing together opens up, the Minnesota fraud ring. That's the manifestation of exactly what you're talking about.
Well, like I said, it's not necessarily a black and white situation. It's just
Sure.
kind of we really have to ask ourselves, what do we want?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do we
Right.
want to have these nets to take care of the poor that are here? Or do we want to have an open opportunity system, the propositional country, as people will call it? The reason you come here is because you're accepting a proposition that the country is making in the first place. So, like I said, if you're actually doing that, then you have to have it sink or swim. You have to have it, well, if you don't succeed, go back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes sense. It's really, it's the hard part is that 50%, a little less than 50% of the country wants a a socialist country. They want America to be socialism. And then 50%, 52% or whatever it was, want old school sink or swim America. And so that is what this, sort of civil war light that's going on right now, civil war of words, for the most part, is really about, is like what the next like 25 years look like. And I can understand, we've talked about this before. I don't get upset at people for feeling the way they feel about that. You're allowed to, that's what we vote for, all that stuff. But like, I do get upset with people for like actively trying to hinder law enforcement from doing like their job. Like they're just guys like doing their job, you know? Um, and maybe the deportations would be going more smoothly, but I mean, honestly, the friction is just great TV, isn't it? You know?
That's kind of the thing that's being got at, actually. If you think about it, is like how much. Well, actually, I think that's in the next clip I got. Let me see if I can
Yeah.
pop that on there and
Nice.
hit play.
Go, this simply isn't worth it. You're putting on this huge show of cruelty. People are dying. You're activating the worst left-wing radicals. And at the end of the day, you're not even like, there's not even something to show for it. So no, this just makes no sense.
And they're speaking for nothing to show for it. Their claim is, and I just gotta say, they're engaging in such bitch shit with their rhetoric of, well, we're just going for the worst of the worst, and so we're in these areas trying to round up these violent, illegal criminals that shouldn't even be in the country. And look at these people in Antifa who are getting in the way of us removing pedophiles and dangerous criminals that nobody wants in the area. And that's not true. We've seen footage of you guys just basically harassing random individuals, asking them for ID. So this is not targeted. You guys aren't just going for illegal criminals. They keep publishing these lists of like the worst and the worst. And from what I understand, a lot of those people, they literally just collected from prisons. And so if you guys are just going for criminals, then you're doing it in the worst possible way that even people who would not object to rounding up the criminals, you seem to have activated. So not only are you not engaging in the mass deportations, but then even on this storyline of, well, we're actually just trying to get the criminals out of the country, well, then you're doing it in a profoundly stupid way if people are out in the streets objecting to it. And it sounds to me like that's not what you're doing. It sounds to me like you've gone into these areas looking for a fight.
Well, I mean, there was this one story which included, several people, several eyewitnesses.
Kind of what I'm getting at. It's like how many violent, illegal immigrant cartel criminals are in Minnesota?
Yeah. Well, from what I
You know,
understand, they're in Minnesota for they went there because of the Somalian fraud. So I think,
but like, I'm
but
not
I
saying
I
that you
hear
shouldn't,
you. I hear
but
you.
that wouldn't even be ICE because the
Right.
Somalians that we're talking about, these are refugees. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
Yep.
DHS, but it wouldn't be ICE. It
Yep.
wouldn't be, Border Patrol. This would
Mhm.
be, more of Department of Justice and, FBI and
Sure.
that realm. Like, why are you sending these guys in? And like I said, I think it really is to provoke the lefties. And like I said, so what you're gonna get is a troll policy and no actual effect.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's at this point, what's the difference from the Democrats if that's all we're getting? Because that's the problem that even Democrats have expressed with their party is like it seems like every policy is just to troll Republicans, and
Yeah.
there is no actual effect to anything that they do for the regular working class person. That is kind of where I'm getting that's why like that's what I'm getting at with the whole like Trump derangement syndrome situation where you have this praxeology, that this action effect that you see on both ends of the spectrum, where you have people who are so enraged by Trump that nothing that he does could be even halfway a good idea,
Right. Yeah.
and that has activated Trump supporters to where nothing that he does could even be a bad idea, because we are responding to that. And you see this Trump derangement coming from both ends to where we can't even have a nuanced conversation and say, hey, actually, there's something to this, and then there's something to this. And the idea of mass men running through Minnesota to look for illegal immigrants is preposterous, and we know it's all
Yes.
preposterous.
Yeah.
So the
Well,
whole point of this is to troll the left, and that is why I'm saying it's like you're wasting all of your political capital to do nothing.
yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think there's a huge swath of the right that wanted exactly this. I mean, I see it all the time. I voted for this, like that kind of a sentiment. And they did what they mean is, I think what most people mean is they voted for what they're being told they're getting, what they're being shown that they're getting, rather than what they're actually getting by the numbers. You know, I I will probably be hard pressed to say that I'm unhappy with my vote, but I am not in a cult. And so I'm perfectly fine admitting weak points, you know, as far as like what we get out of this presidency. Because I said that when I voted for Biden last time. I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna if he does wrong, I'm going to call him out, or I'm going to be able to say so, in conversation or whatever, be like, yeah, that was okay, but I didn't like that shit, whatever. That's our duty as voters. Like, we need to be able to hold our elected officials accountable. We're not able to hold anyone accountable to anything realistically, but in our sentiment, like our outward projection, we need to be able to say, yeah, that's kind of crazy. And I agree with you. I don't think that we're getting what we voted for by and large on the front of immigration enforcement. For sure. We're not getting that. We got it. We had it better. I will say we've gotten it what we voted for in the numbers of people trying to come over right now. The deportation thing is not going well. The border patrol is going swimmingly. Like the numbers of
Right,
people coming over.
which is proof of something there, which is
Yeah.
kind of like, there there's what has become obvious is that the solution is actually more of a the solution's more of a what we need to do is lock down the border and then use the e-verify system and things like that
Yes.
to make it where you
The people
have
who
a
are already here.
self-deportation of the people who are here and can't work legally. That would be the way to do it. But again, that would hit the people that you don't want to hit.
It
And
would, but
that's
I do feel like
like I said, it's a political third rail,
the
and
right
that's
and the
why I'm really
middle
scared to hit it.
are more reasonable in terms of logic at this point, and I think that you can sell a reasonable solution to those people. I do believe that, like yourself, Brad, Dave Smith, me, like all the way to the guy who's got the flag in the back of his pickup or whatever. Like, I think you have a better time selling, listen, here's what we're going to do. The people that are already here, like, we can't get them running through these streets. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's too traumatizing. We're getting all this pushback. Like, and, who knows? Maybe we'll be prophetic again in this episode, but we're going to say, we're going to, we're going to use that C1P or whatever app that is to allow people to expedite their citizenship that are already here. And then we are going on complete lockdown at the border. We're going to take all that ICE, all those guys are going to be booted and suited down at the border and up at the border because we got to watch Canada. And, we're going to it's going to be hard to get in here for a while. But we are going to let the people that came in with no priors stay. And anybody with priors will show themselves through the next few years by committing crimes, going to jail, and we'll take them out through the jail as we are already doing effectively. So I do agree with you. Like, that is the reasonable, logical solution. Grandma and grandpa can stay, and that family down the street, the landscaper that moved in across the street, they can stay. Here's a form, fill it out, and then probably get a job and no safety net. Like you were saying, like we're not gonna pay your house payments, no more pile of money. I think you cut off the tap in that way. And we talked about that, like that probationary period, right? Like, you're not eligible for services for like 4 years or something like that. Maybe healthcare, whatever, people need to survive, but I think there is a way out of this, and I think that you can sell it to the voter base of the current administration a lot easier than you would be able to sell the other thing to the other side if the roles were reversed, you know?
Yeah, like I said, there's definitely something to that. And then okay, so let's do one last victory lap here.
Yeah.
So Don Lemon is
Called it.
charged, and it is in fact the Face Act.
Yes.
And then like it says, but also covers this is so great too. And that to me is exactly what I said. Also
Mhm.
covers interference with religious worship as well as conspiracy statutes. So yeah, so we do have confirmation that the Don Lemon situation is definitely going that way. And
Yeah.
what is so interesting is this plays into that praxeological dynamic that I'm talking about, where you have these people who don't realize that what door they open if they let Don Lemon go. You open up the door for a lot of protests at, like, say, a synagogue. Leftists have issues with the whole Zionist support and the support from synagogues, the support from evangelical churches. Those will start to get ran over. Mosques will get ran over by the
I was
other end.
I was gonna say, yeah, the Muslim
So, like,
temples, yeah,
this is not a game that you want to open up.
no.
There's a reason that we have very specific rules for where people are allowed to protest when it comes to these specific institutions.
Yeah.
And that we say, hey, no, you got to do that outside because we don't want you disrupting other people's right to have their religious observance. So the thing about this is whether or not you're, a lefty or a righty or whatever, that's just the way I see it. I think this is clear cut. You have to go after this. It's something that I've said before. It's like if he robbed a bank, if this was a bank robbery, right? And you have him the day before where they're planning the bank robbery, right? And he's a part of that. And then he says, "Hey, I can't tell you where we're going to go." And then he shows up and he's like, "No, I'm just filming the bank robbery. This is obviously a newsworthy event." You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, no one in their right mind would say
No.
that he's not an accomplice.
Right.
It's obvious that he's an accomplice, and the only way that people get out of that is through mental gymnastics. You
Yeah.
know what's going on here, and you're trying to skate out of it. And I would say the same thing. I think they said Valentina Gomez did that, and I have no problem throwing her in jail. It's the wrong person to try to whataboutism for me because I can't stand that lady.
Look, it we have to, we have to have consequences for our actions, or you don't have any semblance of, what would you say, like, structure. There's no structure. And I get it. Like, I know there's a lot of people who want less structure. They just want to, and it's like, but that isn't real. Like, borders borders are biblical, like laws, like commandments, like all this stuff is like as old as time. Like, there has to be rules. And like, if Don Lemon does, 2 years on a bid, or he gets off, even if he gets off with like a slap on the wrist and like, whatever, he has to have some kind of conviction for this. Like, you have to
Right.
do it.
I'm not saying throw the book at him. I just I don't like to see people go to jail in general. But
Right.
yeah, he did that. That is something that has to be
Penance must be paid.
handled. There has to be
100%.
some kind of restitution. Those people were not there to do an ice gathering. They were there
Right.
to do a religious gathering, and you interrupted it because of your views on ice.
Hmm.
And like I said, if you had that feeling and you wanted to go outside the church and protest while they were inside doing their thing, I'd have my own personal moral judgments.
Sure.
Just like I personally back the more Palestine side of the Israel, but like people are over here going into synagogues and messing with them, and I'm like, no, there's a
Nope.
moral judgment there. It's like you don't do that. Like leave
Yep.
that alone. It's not the same thing, and you're kind of there might have been people in that like congregation who would have supported you, and now you've turned them off because you seem like an asshole.
Yes.
Again, there's a praxeology to these things. It's like you're turning more people off than you're gaining. The only people that you're actually the old preaching to the choir thing. It's like all
Yes.
you're doing is
Yes.
energizing the base. The only people who like this already agreed with you.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. I think that's what we've seen with Don Lemon. They were celebrating him at the Grammys after party or whatever. It's like, that's fake. Like, that's literally 0.000000001% of the population that already agreed with you. And they're just, giving you your flowers for being a dick. And that is not what we saw. That's not the way we feel. And, I'm with you. Like, I support, the Jews' right to assemble in prayer. I support the Muslim right to assemble in prayer, all that stuff. Like, we're going to leave you alone while you're praying to your God. Like, 100% of the time. That's in the law, and it's a good law. It's one of the few good laws we do have, and it needs to be
Really is.
protected. Yeah, it needs to be protected as such. Speaking of which, I do think there's another realm that should be off limits, and it is right in line with this podcast, which is dad influence. Like, school should be entirely off limits from preaching, requiring participation, or, even talking about your own personal political stance or religious belief in school to students. Like, you say what you want to say around the water cooler. When you get into the classroom, keep that shit out of my kids' ears. Like, I don't want them to know whether you are gay or straight, Muslim or Christian, or, a Republican or a Democrat or a libertarian or whatever. I don't want them to know. I want them to say, like, Mrs. Johnson was a good teacher. Like, she taught me how to read. That's it. That's that's what you're there for. You're not there to influence their opinions. They're not your children, they're mine. They're in your charge. I'm trusting you with that. And in the state of Washington, one school, Cascade Middle School, completely violated that trust with more than one parent, I'm sure. But I have this clip from local commentator Brandy Cruz. I find her to be quite centric, but she, does lean more to the right because the left is so crazy right now. But, she's a reformed TDSer. So for that reason, I really appreciate her because I am as well. So let's listen to this. This is 9 minutes. We don't have to listen to the whole thing. I don't have it nicely queued up like you do, but we'll do the first part of it here.
Name is
I ruined
Vance.
my cue,
His
though.
child goes to Cascade Middle School in the Highline School District, and he posted this on social media.
So my son just called and said that his school just brought him to a protest. So he's currently at a protest. I'm fitting to go rage. Who the said you could bring my child to a protest? Any of our kids to a protest. They see what's happening today. Bringing kids out there now. That's really what's going on. This is craziness.
I'll note that's the school grounds, and people are blocking the parking lot to the school grounds. So you're impeding this parent from getting to his own child. I just wanted to add that.
Blue hairs, everything. Are you serious? Yellow hair? Oh my God, my kid is at a woke school. What is going on? This is Cascade Middle School, everybody. Cascade Middle School. Did you consent to that? You didn't want to do that.
No, I was when the cops came up. One of the guys was like the guy with the megaphone, like a kid, who was like, "Do not talk to the federal thingamabobs."
Yeah, and so
He doesn't even know. He said federal thingamabobs. Like, he has no idea, and he should have no idea. Like, even in middle school, like, you should just be scraping the surface of forming your own political opinion through reading, like, contextual fact from a book and having a teacher explain the way a thing happened, like, as fact,
This is
not as an
something that
opinion.
I've talked about a lot, man. Yeah, obviously young kids, not even a little bit. Like, and there's a reason for this, right? Because politics is a blood sport. There's an old saying,
Yeah.
politics is war by other means. And I think that is a very accurate statement. If you remember when, going back, but when Greta Thunberg or whatever came out and she was 16
Yeah.
and all these people were like, oh, you're over here making fun of this kid. And I'm like, well, this kid that you're referring to is 16 years old and decided to speak at the UN.
Right.
So, like, at a certain point, like, when is it fair game? You know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
like,
but
yeah.
but like at the same time, if you're talking about a protest at all, you should never take your kids to a protest. It is
No.
insane.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And
Agreed.
the idea that you have a school taking someone else's kids to a protest is crazy. And I can actually tell you, I went to a private school when I was younger, and they had a scholarship that they used to help fund the school. And I actually ended up at a protest that they took us to for that reason too, to make sure that scholarship that was done by the government kept going. So when I was in about, I would say middle school, They did the same shit. And like I said, looking back, I remember saying, man, that's kind of fucked up because I had no idea why I was there. I had no
Right.
idea what was going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you got a
Yep.
bunch of us kids chanting shit because we're going to say whatever our teacher tells us to say.
Yep.
You know, that is incredibly wrong. And it should never be taken seriously either. Taken seriously.
That's not real. That is literally whatever political side doing it. It is a stunt. You know, it's actually the most evil form of propaganda that exists, in my opinion. You're taking someone else's child, you're dressing them up in your own political ideology and marching them out into a street, putting them in danger, like physical harm. A kid in Minnesota got run over, like by accident or whatever, and some kids got pepper spray, like runoff, like overspray, if you will, like small children, grade school. There's a school in Portland, Oregon that took all their little, it's literally a Montessori, took all those toddlers out to protest. And this is absolutely indefensible. Like, I don't care if the parents agreed or not. Nobody signed a waiver. Nobody signed a permission slip. That dad had no idea. And he goes on in this interview that Brandy does with him. We don't have to watch it, but he goes on to say, like, he had no notification. His son literally had to text him to let him know, you know, like you have to get
I
a
don't think you
permission
should
slip
take
to
your
take him
own
to a
kids
fucking
to a
park off
protest.
site. Our school makes us sign permission slips for them to walk down to the park to play for a day at the end of the school year. They do it once a year, maybe twice, but for like a picnic, you know, and you can go down there and meet them. And it's like, okay, so that requires a permission slip, but for you to like put a sign in my child's hand and turn him into like a tiny little soldier for your fucking political cause requires no notification whatsoever. What the fuck are you talking about? I would be furious, more mad than that guy was, for sure. You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is a lot of the reason, like I said, I want to just homeschool because it's like you can't trust anyone nowadays, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
You know,
hard. I
like,
mean, I am fortunate, you know, I know the people that are in our school system like pretty well. You know, I know most of them, not all of them, but I know pretty much what they're about. And we have good communication with our teachers. They're great at I do appreciate like our staff at our school, but it's hard, dude. Like we wouldn't have been able to send our kids to public school if we were still in Portland. Because we were living in Portland and we got a hold of their Portland Public Schools curriculum for kindergartners. My oldest was about to go to kindergarten, and they're showing them genitalia cartoons, number one. They're calling it person with a penis and person with a vulva. And like they're playing little games where they cover their mouth and they say, now whisper a name that you wish you had. And it could be any name that you could think of. Do you wish you had a different name than the one your parents gave you? Kindergartners. They're doing all this stuff and it's just like literal indoctrination. And you can't knock me off of that spot. Like I'm posted up. I believe that wholeheartedly. And that included with lots of other things going on in Portland at the time, like triggered our move. But the first call I made was to our superintendent, and he, you know, he he can't be politically incorrect or anything. He gave me a very professional answer that I was satisfied with about the style of education that my child would be receiving. And we're pretty happy with it so far. I mean, it is good. And my kids are 2 blocks away. So like if there's gunshots, I'll hear them, you know, while I'm at work. And I'll be on foot. But, you know, it's like it's scary. And I wouldn't wish public school are my worst enemy at this point right now. So if you can homeschool, if you're in a state that supports that, doesn't make it difficult. Washington State makes it very difficult, but we're close. I mean, we're right on that Idaho border, man. Idaho's like right there. You know, it's like it's not quite the free state of Florida, but it is pretty, you know, they're getting rid of their vaccination mandates, which I love. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's just that whole ordeal with that middle school and that dad and that kid. I just they're
Yeah,
not your they're
I
not your
really,
kids. They're not your kids. They have this idea right now in the public school system that these are their children. It's like, no, have your own children. That's another thing. Most of the people that teach in our school have their own children. There's no false dichotomy there of like them thinking that my kids are theirs. They take care of them during the day. That's with the parents' trust. Like, I'm entrusting you with my most valuable possession, my most valuable resource, like a part of me, you know? And if you betray that, you'll fucking know.
yeah, and that's kind of where I've gotten to is it's just like, what is all of this worth? You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking at your kids, you know, that's something that I've said numerous times about like, you know, I'm an economics mind, right? Like that's where I train. That's like my bread and butter. That's what I learned. And there's something called return on investment, and
Bro,
there's no such thing as a, you know, lack of return of an on investment with children. You know,
right.
there's like it's something that like puzzles me to this day, people complaining about having children. Because it's like, you know, when you have children, like, yeah, they do cost a lot. Yeah, they are irritating at times, and there's an investment, but
Mm-hmm.
it's to me, it's like complaining about making $1 million off $5 investment and saying, "Well, yeah, but I had to put the $5 in."
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it always comes out in the end as a positive. So like, what are you even getting at? And
Yeah.
you know, the more you put in, the better that you're going to get out. And people you know, shove all of this, you know, from cradle to 18, it seems. They want to put it off onto someone else to raise their kids and do all of it. And it's like you're missing out on all of the pluses. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then
Yes.
you're wondering why this is such a negative experience for you.
The
You know,
best,
you've given your kids away.
yeah. And the best days are literally like when one of them is like, I don't feel like I don't feel good. I don't want to go to school. And they like stay home and we like play video games and shit, you know, and just like chill out. And like they're not feeling good, so they're not really like rambunctious or anything. But like you get that sick day with mom or dad, or, you know, sometimes like even our youngest will just, he's burned out. Like they just get burned out. And it's like, dude, I can understand burnout. Like I need a day off from work, you know, like an extra day off or whatever. So sometimes we just like keep them home because like fuck your schedule. Like I don't give a shit about that like at all. Like you're on my schedule. Like if my kids are like crying on their way out the door, like we're not going to school today. Fuck it, stay home, play with your toys. You know, like it's not it's not that serious right now. And it never really is either. Like you're not a bad employee because you take a paid day off. You know, you need to show up. You need to like be there for your test, or, you know, I'm trying to like instill some accountability to them. But like we don't ignore, you know, something as big as like that negative a response to going to school that day. We're staying home. Like if you can't go, you're not going. You stay home with mommy and daddy. It's fine. And yeah, you'll never regret that. I still remember one particular sick day. My dad had to cut off work. He stayed home with me because my mom couldn't. And this was when my parents were still married. So I was very young. I was like 4, 5, maybe, probably 5. And I stayed home. We watched fucking Ninja Turtles, and He-Man, and I think Dad put on RoboCop, which I was like way too young for, a super gory movie. But like I I was supposed to be sick, but I wasn't sick. And I was like I thought I was sneaking into my room and bringing toys out. And my dad could just see me the whole time. But I thought, like, I can't see you, so you can't see me. I remember this. And it's like literally one of the best days, like, that I can remember. I still remember it. It was so much fun. And I had like this huge pile of toys out, and dad never let on that he could see me. It was really funny. Like, why didn't you tell me that? He's like, I don't know. You're having a good time. Like, I didn't give a shit. And,
Funny from
the
the other end. That's kind
right.
of what you get now.
Yeah. But it's like, and now, yeah, when those things happen, like I laugh at my kids, like they're funny. They're fun. Like it's okay to like accept that like having children is probably like the best decision you could ever make for your life. And they have just painted it so wrongly to us that's part of the reason why me and the women I dated and our generation like waited so long, you know, because they sold us a fake bill of goods. Like what I should have been doing was finding Whitney earlier in my life and trying to move towards like starting a family, you know. I can't believe if I would have met her when I was 21 instead of, 31 or whatever, I was like 29, I think. We'd have 10 kids. Like they're so
Yeah, it's
awesome.
like the advice that you were given was you build a life and then you find a wife and then you have kids, when in reality, I think that's a huge reason for the divorce rate. There's
It
something
is.
to building a life with someone that makes it feel like they deserve to be part of it.
You
And
grow up
and it's hard
together.
to explain. Yeah, it's not even just that. It's like it's something that I've said about like billionaires. Now, this isn't 100% across the board, but it's something that if you kind of notice, like the billionaires that are still with the wife or the woman that for a long time, it's
Mhm.
never some guy who made his money and then married the girl. It's a guy who
Right.
married the girl or who was with the girl and then made his money while he was with her. She was part of building that. It
Yeah.
wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's not some random hoe that showed up after I was successful.
Mhm.
And, there's something to like I trust you because you were here when it was rough
Yes.
and not just when it was great.
Yeah. And you don't carry the problem that I run into with myself is I carry these fears and these lines in the sand that shouldn't pertain to my wife because she's not them. So I have this string of like horribly gone awry relationships because I wanted what I have with Whitney. And then I abuse what I have with my wife now because these people in this other pool like taught me things that I didn't need to learn to be in a good, healthy relationship with her. And I think she does the same thing. We've talked about this before, but her and I. So, like, I'm not saying anything that we haven't already discussed, but you learn these things that turn out to be some things positive, but a good portion of it, a lot of the fights that you have as a couple who met later in life stem from something that person didn't even do. And, the children are already going to kind of pay a price for something that they weren't around for. That's just unfortunate, sort of byproduct of raising a child. You do your best to say, like, oh, what am I doing? Like, I wouldn't have liked this. It's really hard sometimes, but I don't know. I think we're doing a good job of trying to navigate that for the most part. We have our rough spots, things that are lingering and won't go away, but I think you're right. And we met at the right time for us, but
I mean, it's done with females too. You see it all the time, and
mhm,
like where females feel like they need a man that's already together.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's
And
a
so,
big
like I
part of the
said, so they
culture
cut.
right now.
Yeah, so they end up cutting themselves off from what would be a good man that would stick by their side and then by the time he's actually successful, he's like, well, no, I tried to give you, I tried to get with
Yes.
you. You wouldn't give me the time of day. And it's like I said, it's, no, very few people are successful at young ages. And like I said, so that's where a lot of this is kind of, I think, really happen. And I think that's where you see a lot of this, like I said, this divorce rate and this hookup culture problem, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah, and that's a whole different topic, probably for a completely other podcast, but like it is, I do feel like I caught the last train out of Berlin, you know, like it's like I'm so grateful because like I was on the dating apps and I went on dates with girls on dating apps and stuff like that. So I was like kind of tip of the iceberg of that, sort of right on the front lines of that whole thing sorting itself out. And I'm so glad that I met her in person in an organic way and decided this is the right way and to pursue, and that she decided that for me as well. She wasn't on those things and she always gave me shit for it when we first got together, rightfully so. But like it really took a turn for the worse real fucking quick. That algorithm driven dating life is for no one. Like that's not real and it just breeds negative results like time after time after time. And I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm grateful.
and there's a perception gap that I think is really what causes the problem with the dating apps.
Yeah.
And the thing is like men are different than women. I'm sorry to trigger everybody and explain
Oh
that to them.
no!
A man will have sex with someone that they have no intention of dating or
Yes.
having a long romantic relationship with. Not saying there are no women that will do that, but it's rarer in women. So what
Yeah.
you end up with from a woman's perspective is if she can get a lot of men to sleep with her, that she is high desirable. She has a high,
Right.
desirability rating. When, this woman can't, so this woman thinks that because she can get a man of a certain caliber to sleep with her, that means that she could eventually, if she tried
She's,
hard enough and did just right, she'd get a man like that to date her.
yeah.
And that is not necessarily true.
No.
And so what you end up with is women that are perpetually single and men that are perpetually single. And that causes, like I said, it causes issues from both ends where the women are perpetually single, but yet they're getting the play from these men who just want to hook up and dump them. And
Yeah.
so they end up with this inflated sense of worth, but a weird cognitive dissonance on the whole, well, why can't I get anyone to settle down with me? And
Yeah.
and like I said, it ends up creating this men aren't shit, mentality
Right.
from one end and, women are all hoes mentality from the other end.
And alternatively for men, that is not a falsely inflated sense of value. That's actually real. For men, it's a resource, right? So if you're a 28-year-old Wall Street executive to be, sort of a rising star in finance, or you run a very successful construction company, or you're a lawyer or a doctor, and every single nurse in your practice wants to have a run at you. That's actually real. Like you have your pick of the litter, quite literally. And so you are given the allowance to pick none of them, or pick whatever one you want for the night or for a month or for whatever amount of time you deem, you know, reasonable for that person. And then you have the ability to move on after that if you want. Like you don't have to
Right.
settle
And
down.
that's kind of what I'm getting at. And then that
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah.
And when that situation happens, you have the women who are getting not chosen or whatever. They're
Right.
they're upset at that woman.
Yes.
The
Yes.
men that are not getting chosen are upset with these women saying they're hoes.
Yep.
Then when that woman inevitably gets turned down for the next woman, right? She says men aren't shit. You see what I'm saying?
Y
It's
It's a
just
vicious cycle, dude, and nobody
yeah.
understands the imbalance. 80% of the women are vying for 5% of the men right now, and it's all because of the dating app. Like, guys will go on and just match so many, and girls are only matching. I've watched, just because it's interesting, I've watched some of this, but, like, basically the algorithm eventually promotes certain men to all the women, and the women's algorithm narrows the type of men that, they will ultimately converse with and go on a date with. And so it's working against each other. It might be one of the best psyops ever run for depopulation, you know? Like, the fact that they're not getting married and having children as early that we're not doing that as early as we were, has led to the need for mass immigration, you could argue.
Actually have something that I think you'll find interesting. Let me see if I can find this. But yeah, like I don't think you're right, but you are. So like what you're looking at is what they call a third variable. But here, let me show you
Mhm.
this. It's pretty interesting. You know, they say the female mate choice preference prioritize partners with high socioeconomic status, intelligence, ambition, or stability,
Yep.
right? But what's kind of interesting, if you put instead of mate choice preferences, watch this. Social learning behaviors where females increase their preference for a male after observing other females select him.
Mm.
Common in species like guppies and humans, this strategy reduces the time, energy, and risks associated with assessing male quality directly. It is often influenced by perceived quality of the model female, such as her attractiveness or character. So, what's kind of interesting about this is that it has actually been scientifically proven that women like men that have already been chosen by another woman.
Wedding
And
ring
it's an
theory.
old short yeah, it's an old shortcut.
Yeah.
So this is something that's kind of interesting where you have that's why you have this kind of phenomenon that's played forever. I mean, back in the olden days, you'd have a man with like 14 wives, and that
Right.
was the reason why is because he had a bunch of money, he had a big estate, he had a lot of
Full
stuff.
head of
And
hair.
then the regular peasants, yeah, the regular peasants may have a wife if they have a wife.
Right.
So like it's not new. It's just kind of playing out in a more efficient way because you
Yeah.
have an internet calculator handling all of this for you,
It's gone
if that
digital.
makes
It's
sense.
no longer analog.
Yeah, so that's actually something that I've found interesting. This is where like a lot of people hate the terminology, but the idea of enforced monogamy actually came along was to make sure there was enough chicks for everybody, where they started making it illegal to have more than one wife, and that was kind of the reasoning why
Mhm.
was because like I said, somebody would get a handful of chicks following them, and then every chick would follow them. And I mean,
Wow.
you can see this with like rock stars
Yeah.
and all of that. So it's like it's not a dynamic that's new, it's just a dynamic that's new for the average everyday guy. So the popular guy in school that would have had his pick of the school now has his pick of the region.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? So
I
it's
do.
causing that dynamic to flow out differently in a larger scale,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, because your reach is so much farther now. But, there were always those stories of like men in the 50s that had like a wife in the city and a wife in the suburbs, the Don Draper, status dudes that ran two families, and because there was no internet, shit, they might grow up their whole life and not know each other. I mean, some guys pulled it off. like right till the very end. And then all of a sudden at the funeral, there's 2 fucking families there, and he's like, I'm dead. I'm out. But yeah, I mean, it is crazy. It's just wild. It's kind of like with social media in general. Like we're seeing the ICE stuff, we're seeing all this. We're not reading it in a newspaper, we're seeing video, and we're not built to see everything or know everything. We're
Not
also,
adapted to that.
yeah, not yet anyway, maybe someday, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know about you, but it drives me nuts when I kind of like hypothesize something. Like somebody asks me a question, I'm like, I don't know, but to me it seems like this. Then like immediately somebody gets out their phone to go like fact check me, you know? And it doesn't upset me because I want to get away with lying. It upsets me because your word and what you had in here used to be valuable, and now it's not valuable at all. Like, not, and usually the way that goes is somebody goes, "Oh shit, you're right," or well, it says here, and there might be some nuance to that, or whatever. It was like, yeah, but I'm kind of right, or I might have been a year off on that factoid, or I was close on who that actor was, or whatever. But like, you get fact checked like in your daily life, and so the knowledge you have in your head is absolutely fucking worthless at this point. And that's a little frustrating because if it's not valuable at all, then it's not knowledge. It can't be considered knowledge at that point. It's just like, what did I remember all that shit for? What I memorized Christopher Columbus song for? Or like, what did I, you know, 1492, man,
Well,
sailed the ocean blue. Like,
that was always the trap, though. This is
yeah,
you can actually look at one of my older episodes. I kind of get into this is the trap of like knowledge was the idea that the root memorization was the key, and no, the
right.
key was looking at this knowledge and being able to decipher it, the critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And we weren't trained for that in school. We were trained to take tests, and they needed you to be able to memorize the information and answer the question on the test.
Yep.
And like that's really the thing. It's like, where are we useful? It's the critical thinking. That's where the knowledge comes in. And the game here with all of this is we need to realize that information itself is not unique or special, not if it's true,
Right.
because true information is universal. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, like, there's this that's been a long time thing that I fight about is that information itself is infinitely replicatable. There is no scarcity to information. If I have an idea and I tell you, now you have the idea, then you tell
Right.
someone else they have the idea.
Right.
There's no scarcity, and I can make it as many of this idea as I want. And so we have this weird like ownership over ideas that shouldn't technically exist. Like this was my idea, and it's just, I mean, is it though?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's like
Or is it everyone's?
when you and your group of friends from college think that you made up a term. Like we were using that before anybody, like that's definitely, we made that up and spread it around, like, and it's like, no, there's actually no original ideas. There's no original music anymore. You listen to the new Taylor Swift album, and it's just ripping off like 15 songs from the 80s or whatever. And like, there's no like, originality,
It's
like you
all in
said.
the Greek tetrachord.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this
Just about.
society has existed before. It was just in like, you know, the Amazon, it's like, but yeah, I do. I see what you mean. I, so what, in summation, the trap is thinking that where the knowledge comes from, like where the information comes from is important. And that's not the important
Exactly.
part. The important part is how you digest and regurgitate or in practice the information. So like it doesn't matter
But how do
where
you use this?
right. It didn't matter.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
This is kind of the thing. Like mathematics is completely invented. Numbers aren't real. Show me a
Right.
one. You show me one apple, but you can't show me one.
Yeah, that's not
You know what I mean?
nature.
You can
Yeah.
show me a symbol that's meant to represent. Like again, it's all made up. It's so is language, but so is it's like, well, why do we use it then? Because it is
Mhm.
useful. It matters if it's useful, right? So it's useful for me to put a number on the number of apples and then to do calculations. And in the grand scheme of things, the reason it's important information is because it works, right? The
Yeah.
reason why our language, which is English, which is a bunch of made up noises that we make with our mouth, the
Mhm.
reason we still use it is because it works. I
Yeah.
can have an idea, I can transmit it to your head just simply because we speak the same language.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So,
Yes.
like, the question really is, does this work? Can we use this? How is
Mhm.
this useful? And so if we're talking about a given, idea, it's, am I right in the application of this idea? Does that make any sense?
It does.
So that is what is mattering when we're actually talking about any of this. The world is
Right.
full of great ideas and great terms and lingos and stuff, but is this actually applicable?
Yeah.
Or is this just some, theoretical nonsense?
Yeah. No, I mean that I saw, that I was telling you that I disagreed last week with some of Asmongold's stance on education, right? And because he is like they they shouldn't be learning any of that, like they shouldn't be learning like calculus or like any they should education should be based on critical thinking alone. And he was like, I don't care about iPads or, computer technology, like, but they need to learn to use it. I kind of disagree with that to a degree because technology is only getting easier to pick up on, not harder. So, like, back when we had to type on keyboards, you know, to use a desktop, like for my job and stuff, I had to learn typing, and I'm a pretty good typist by now. But that will not be the case in 20 years. Like the phones are already so easy that Steve Jobs can take the iPhone 1 prototype to Africa and give it to a kid without running water, and he can figure out how to use it in 15 minutes. Like it's easier to use. So I don't buy that they need to learn it younger. Like they can learn it at the same time that I learned it. When I was in fifth grade, I took a typing class. So in fifth grade, you can give a kid an iPad and teach him to navigate it. He'll pick it up in 15 minutes. But where I do agree with him is the critical thinking aspect. It's like, I don't care if he does math on his iPad. What I would like the iPad to do is supply a basis for learning how to critically think, like how to digest the information being given, like you're talking about. I had a really good history teacher. He's also my basketball coach for the first 3 years of high school. And he said, if you don't remember when something happened, but you can go down below the answer and tell me why, I will give you like 3/4 credit for that answer. So he cared a lot about teaching us why. Like, he's like, there's 3 reasons for war. It's money, religion, or politics. Like in general, correct. In general,
You
you
wouldn't have
know,
liked me
what's that?
because I say that the actual universal truth of war is there's never one reason for it, because there's never one reason for anything that ever
Well,
happens in
he said
politics.
it could be all 3. He said it could be all 3. So, and if it's 2 out of the 3, I want to know, like, if it's religion, like, why are Israel and Palestine, that why are they warring, or like whatever, tell me a little bit about that, and he'll give you credit. So I do credit him a great deal with teaching me at least some semblance of critical thinking, albeit later on down the line than you probably would want it to be. But I think, yeah, like in middle school, you start in heavy on dissecting the information. Like, you know, what's why is there gravity? Like, why are we stuck to the ground? Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
not just like
this
what
is
is
why
gravity, but why?
when you're talking about, like, say, for instance, history, right? Praxeology, I think, is just such a slept on discipline of looking at things like history. Like, why did they want to do this?
Yeah.
Why did they feel like this is the only way to handle this problem?
Mhm.
Because the thing about, like, for instance, let's do the Civil War. Nothing ever happens for one reason. Slavery was part of it. People want to
Mhm.
sit here and say it's not, but it was.
Yeah.
But what was also a part of it was that the North wanted to do a tariff economy, and the South wanted to do was against that, because of
Yeah.
the way that the South worked was they were producing unfinished goods, and the North was producing finished goods. So a tariff would have affected the South harder than it affected the
Right.
North. That is
Right.
why the first shot was where? Fort Sumter in South Carolina, where the port was. The reason that this whole thing blew up was actually around taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Tea Party,
But we
the
can't talk about that.
right.
You know what I mean?
No,
Because we have to make this a good versus evil
it's got to be
narrative. And
emotional.
that is my
Yeah.
big problem with history, is it's taught in this good versus evil. This is the good guys, these are the bad guys. Let's tell the
Yeah.
story of this war. Here's your
Yeah.
good guys, here's your bad guys. Now let's tell the story of the war. When in
Mhm.
reality, there are no good, there are no bad. It's more like Game of Thrones. Who's the
Yeah.
good guy in Game of Thrones?
Right.
None of them are. They're all, flawed, morally,
Mhm.
ambiguous characters,
There's
and
no Bilbo in the
they
Game of
can in
Thrones.
the doing the best they can in the situations that they're given,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so, like I said, it's not a calculation from that, and it creates this fairy tale understanding of how the world works, and it also, in my opinion, causes more sheep type people who
Yeah.
don't realize that the bad guys coming actually is that big of a threat, because the good doesn't always just win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, let's take, at our school, they celebrate Martin Luther King Day. All the kids do like some type of grade appropriate Martin Luther King project, right? Great. I am all game for the slow rollout of information. I don't need my 7-year-old to know everything all the time. I would say MLK was for the greater good. I think he did something that was important. And then, as we've spoken about before, there will be information that needs to come to light for my son to form a whole opinion around that matter. And I will roll that out a little faster than the public school system would like, because I don't want him to grow up as sort of, what they did with, I brought up Columbus earlier. What they did with Christopher Columbus was like, oh, he's this great guy, discovered America. And then they start going into like little details later. Well, he didn't. This was false education, by the way. They said he didn't know that it wasn't India, and that so they told us later, like say middle school or maybe early high school, that he thought he had landed in India, which is factually inaccurate. He could not have thought that, because he's like, that's why they called them Indians, because he thought he was in India. There was no India. It wasn't called India. It was called something else. Maybe you can help me with that. What was the previous
well, from
name?
what I understand, where
Hold
he
on,
landed uh, wasn't even mainland, America. He landed in a place called the West Indies. So I
yeah.
do think that is correct, that he thought he was sailing to India. He was
He
trying
thought,
to get to the
okay, but
backside
it
of
wasn't.
India.
Here's the thing though. It was called Hindustan 92. So it wasn't called India, like at all. That terminology did not exist. So even if he did think that he landed in India, what we call India now, he would have called them Hindus. Like that was the terminology of the time. That was the name of the country. It was called Hindustan. So he didn't think he was going to India. He was trying to get to Hindustan through the through the channel or whatever that they thought might exist or whatever.
He didn't think that that continent was even there. He didn't know the
Right.
continent was
Right.
there. He was attempting to sail all the way around and hit the backside
That's it.
of India.
Thank you.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. And actually, his calculations were wrong.
Yeah.
So had America not existed there, he would have starved to death on his way
Right.
trying to get
Yeah,
around.
it wouldn't have even worked. But like the term Indian is actually derived from what the Spanish called them when they reached there, realized they were not in Hindustan, and they called them Los Indios, which translate to children of God, because they were out in nature, right? So they were, running around with like loincloths and just living in nature. So they called them children of God, Los Indios. But I was told that they were called Indians because he thought he was in India, when in reality, India did not even exist. It was called Hindustan. So there's all this conflicting stuff, right? So my intent is to like roll out what I know and use the internet. Doesn't matter where the information comes from. We've established that, to help them realize that there's a way to generate a fully formed opinion, and you don't have to wait for the teachers to, sort of feed it to you.
That's kind of the thing that I say is like, I don't know, there's something to another truth, which is when the kid is ready to ask the question, they're ready to know the answer.
Yes.
There's that part, and then there's also the thing of like, why would you teach somebody something wrong to go over it later to teach them again the correct answer?
Right. Yes. That is something that I feel slighted over. I felt like I had wool over my eyes on a lot of things growing up. But I did have some teachers who cared,
Never photographed FDR in his wheelchair because they had such respect for the office of the presidency back then, not
Right.
like they do today.
Right.
It wasn't because he was locking up journalists.
Right.
You sure that's not what it was?
Yeah. Yeah. Because he didn't want to be photographed in a wheelchair, because he didn't want to look
and
weak.
look
Yeah.
weak.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, God bless FDR, but goodness gracious. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'll tell you one thing. The answer is not parading our children, other people's children, down the street to protest your cause. Like, it's not that.
Let me borrow your kids. I got a cause to protest.
Fuck no. Like, it's not the answer. And, the answer is not the answer to the ICE problem is exactly what we talked about. Take the information, digest it, figure out a way to output that with a reasonable, like solve for a result that is like good. And I think, we talked about that earlier, which is, we probably can't just be running through these streets, like ejecting people at random. We probably need to dial that back and come up with an amicable solution, which I think we've outlined. And maybe the president will see our podcast and zero in on that, like he did last time.
If not, we'll grab somebody else's kids and give them signs that say kids
Yes.
shouldn't protest.
That's right. And then we'll march them down the street in the middle of the street where all the cars are. Jeez
Just says,
Louise.
kids shouldn't protest. Kids
Yes.
shouldn't protest.
We're protesting.
Come on,
the
that would be the
protest.
funniest protest.
That would be
ever.
hilarious.
It's just a
Yeah.
bunch of kids with signs saying kids shouldn't protest.
I don't care about your cause. Oh, that's funny. That's super funny.
Dude, but like, yeah, no, kids should not protest. I will waive that when we start talking about teens, but I'll also say that just
Mhm.
realize what you're walking into. I remember making that argument then. I was a young kid and when I got
Yep.
into politics and I wanted
Yep.
to be taken seriously and didn't want to be treated with kid gloves either. So like I think that's crazy. And that's kind of the thing I remember saying about like Barron Trump or Chelsea Clinton or any of that when people were arguing about that. I was like, well, Chelsea Clinton's in it. She's involved. She's
Yeah.
giving speeches. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So like
Yes.
yeah, she's fair game. Eric Trump, he's in it. He's involved. He's giving
Mhm.
speeches. He's talking. Yeah, that's the way it goes. Don Jr., same thing. He's in speeches. He's doing stuff. He's involved. He's fair game. Go for him if you want to.
Mm.
But Barron Trump's going to school, minding his own damn business. Leave him alone.
Right.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So like
Exactly.
that's
Stop
kind of
trying to
like
don't drag them in. If they walk in, that's one thing, but
I
don't
mean,
drag them
yeah,
in.
yeah, it's fair game. I don't care what his age is, if he was 17 or 16 or under it. I think that was a really dumb way of putting it. And it's like if you want to criticize the parent for bringing their kid into the politics, then that's fair enough. But
Yep.
like I said, in the case of like Ben Shapiro, I think Ben Shapiro started writing columns at 16.
Yeah.
In the case of Greta Thunberg, like I don't think her parents made her go speak at the UN. I think
No,
she wanted to
she
do
she
that.
had a passion.
You
I
know?
mean, and you do have a duty as a parent to facilitate your child's passions to a degree. You do not have a duty. You do have a bit of a duty to help facilitate them as a teacher, but you do not have a duty to take a bunch of unsuspecting toddlers to an ICE protest. I think there is a very clear distinction in that. And yeah, I mean, if middle schoolers and high schoolers stage a walkout on their own, void of teacher interference or assistance or anything like that, fine, but
Like I said, I think you should stay out of it until we get to high school. Like
yeah,
high school, I
yeah.
get it. That's when you start exploring and you're trying to become an adult and you're
Hmm.
trying to explore the civics and get
Yes.
involved and figure it out before gets time to vote, and so you know
Hmm.
what's going on. So, like I said, that what is that 14? I don't think that's what is the word unreasonable to
Yeah.
say that like under 14 you can talk about it with your buddies and all that, but like you should not be
No,
politically active.
no,
You don't know what the hell
no.
you're talking about.
You don't know anything. And when you're 14, hopefully the good Lord provided you with a set of parents that have taught you that it's okay to be wrong about a thing. Like you can go out there and if you want to go but if you go out there and you see a bunch of people that don't behave like you are doing things that you think are wrong, you probably shouldn't be there. You should probably turn away and walk the fuck away and then reevaluate your stance. Right. It's like if you think it's wrong for people to throw bottles at police officers or ICE agents or whatever full of frozen water and try to injure them, you should probably reevaluate your stance. If you think that's wrong.
Yeah.
If you're out there and your parents have taught you manners and, all that stuff, but on the other side, if you think that's right because what they're doing is so wrong, then whatever, stay and throw bottles and go to jail. But you're going to go to jail. There's consequences to your
Yeah,
actions.
I'm gonna go pee, and then
Yeah,
when I get back, let's do Epstein,
let's do it.
and then
I'm in.
we'll wrap.
Yep.
So Epstein.
Yeah. You want to start off with his most recent interview? I have it pulled up here.
Let's do it. Go.
It's kind of a banger. It's hold on. I've
The
got the
Steve
screen.
Bannon one?
This is Microsoft, man. This
Bill
is
Gates.
Bill Gates himself answering some not so tough questions, but looking nervous nonetheless. Let's check it out.
Bill Gates breaks his silence on the latest release of the Epstein files. This is from today.
Every minute I spent with him, I regret and I apologize that I did that.
Onto that issue of trust. brings me to Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know what your relationship with him was.
Yeah, I met Jeffrey in 2011. So over a period of 3 years, I had a number of dinners with him. The focus was always
So what about like the Russian hookers?
he knew a lot of very rich people, and he
He
was
did.
saying he could get them to give money to global health. You know, in retrospect, that was a dead end. And I've said many times, but I'll say again, I was foolish to spend time with him. I was one of many people
Yeah.
who regret ever knowing him.
Right.
You've no doubt seen the allegations, including some of them in the last 24 to 48 hours. Are they true?
No, apparently Jeffrey wrote an email to himself. That email was never sent. The email is, false. So I don't know what his thinking was there. You know, was he trying to attack me in some way? But
So let me get this straight. Jeffrey Epstein wrote an email to himself because he knew that after he was killed, that the main thing that he wanted the public to know is that you were sleeping with Russian hookers and you wanted to give your wife a antibiotic so she wouldn't know that you transmitted an STD that you got from Russian hookers to her.
Long live Asmongold. Dude, that guy is so ruthless. I thought I had a sharp tongue. Nobody's tongue is sharper than his. It's crazy. It's so funny.
Yeah, it can't be any more obvious that it's just like, well, like, I don't know, if you came to me and was like, hey, somebody wrote an email to themselves saying that like you gave your wife a STD from a Russian hooker, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Where did you get this crazy shit from? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, where did you get that? Like, what? Of course, that's insane, dude. Why would you even like? Obviously, that's not true. But
Yeah.
he's just like, oh well, I mean, he wrote an email to himself. It's like, come on, man.
He's been alive too long. Like he literally has like risen to a place where, and all these people are guilty of this, where they just think we're so beneath them because we know so little about what they do, that the moment that we find out what the fuck they do, that we are still going to believe the bullshit that motherfucker can't tell. He wanted to vaccinate his wife without her knowing. Like, and you want me to like let you tell me how to do like healthcare at all? Like, you wrote a computer program. He didn't even write it. Like, he just played the game. He won capitalism. Congratulations. You have no moral authority over me whatsoever, especially not now. Especially not now. That's where I'm at with these folks.
It is interesting too that they're spinning it into Russiagate 3.
Yeah.
You know, because like this is the thing, Russiagate 1 would be obviously the like Russia is conspiring with Donald Trump to steal the election. And, that all went through and was provably false. Like, even if, I want to say if you go and you look into it, the best any Democrat will ever bring for you is, well, no. They bought some Facebook ads. Russia did buy some Facebook ads to help Trump. And it's just like, okay, well, that means nothing. You know what I mean? A couple $1 million in Facebook ads is a drop in the bucket. This isn't what you guys were saying it was from the beginning. Yeah.
Not that.
It's not that. And if that's what you're talking about, we could talk about the FTS scandal and the Ukrainian money that was being funneled into the democratic process at the same time, which was way more money.
Yeah.
So then you have Russiagate 2, which was playing on the leftover cognitive dissonance from Russiagate 1 and saying, hey, no, this laptop is just totally Russian disinformation. You can't trust it and all of that. And then now, like I said, this Epstein release, which, even the Department of Justice has admitted is not all of everything. They still haven't released everything.
Yeah.
And like I said, it seems like this release specifically, if you look at it, is tailored to try to make it look like he's Mossad. Or not Mossad, Russian intelligence. What do they call it? FSB. Yeah. So
Really?
they're spinning it now to be a Russian. He was a Russian asset. That must be what it is. Look at him. He's
Well,
tied to Russia.
he's clearly Mossad. Like,
But like, yeah, and even like a lot of the Russian ties, you go and you look, Ehud Barak is trying to get in close with Putin to make a deal over Syria when
sure.
Assad was in charge of Syria, which was an ally of Russia. So like they're trying to make backroom deals about all of that, and then a lot of these extraneous emails around that seem to be used to, that effect. Now, am I saying that I believe Putin's completely innocent in anything? Probably not. It's Putin. But, if you look at this, it really does look like this guy is not necessarily specifically Mossad, but what they call, I think it's called Five Eye Intelligence. He's working for, 5 different countries
It's
as an
not
intelligence
it's not
asset.
even about countries. He's working for a specific group of oligarchical like mechanisms. It has nothing to
But
do with
that's those
countries
Five
or
Eye
governments.
Intelligence.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's what you can garner is it's not about party lines or real lines or borders. Like
There's
it
literally an email that says, "I'm an agent of the Rothschilds." He
right,
literally
right.
identifies himself as an agent of the Rothschilds.
It has
And that's
nothing to
kind of
do
what
with
I'm getting
government.
at. When we're talking about Five Eye, we're talking about a bunch of countries that are ran by banks as well. And
Yes.
I'm not saying the Jews because I don't believe it's the Jews. I believe it's, international money. Like Tim
Some
Gillian kind of
Jews.
puts it in the best way.
It's
There are people who
not
are not
the
Jews.
Jews, it's some Jews. And it's some
Even just
Arabs
that,
and it's
there are people
some
that, there are
Americans.
people Japanese and
Yes.
Swedish and
Yes.
everything else that are doing this shit.
It is
It's
some
it's an
Jews. It's not all
international
Jews.
money thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
an international money thing. It's these people that don't actually have a direct national tie. I could pick up and go to Germany or Italy or Britain or Israel or US or, the
Yeah.
money is what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about any of these countries falling apart. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so that's what I think he was working for, is that kind of interest.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm trying to find this image right now. Dude, your boy is like a huge conspiracy guy. So check out, let me see if I can pull this up. Check out oh, come on, don't add me. All right. You dicks. Hold on. I'm gonna find it. Show me the split screen. Here we go. Check out this picture real quick. Oh, wait, let me share this tab instead. Look at this. Look at Andrew Jackson. Look at Jeffrey Epstein.
That is interesting, huh?
He looks like a fucking clone. Are they just cloning? Or do these people never die? They're aliens who live thousands of years off of the blood of
Anunnaki are coming
children.
for us.
Off of the blood of children. That's the fucked up part. It's like, it all goes back to these kids. Like I'm proud of
So this
America.
Pizzagate was all a crazy conspiracy, and you got all these
It's real.
Pizzagate emails back and forth.
And it's real. And here's the part. I am proud of America, right, left, and center right now, because we are not letting this shit go. Like, this is too much.
We got to stay pitbull with it. We got to lockjaw and not let go.
This is too much. Be Candace Owens. We all need to like channel our inner Candace on this issue, because this isn't a crazy conspiracy. This is fucking real. And these people are evil, like actually evil. I think that's my opinion.
Don't accept the obvious limited hangout that he's a Russian asset. Come on, guys. Like, are we retarded? Are we stupid? Like, are we gonna fall for that shit again? First of all, and second of all, if it was really Russian stuff, you're telling me Biden wasn't going to release that shit in the middle of the Ukraine war?
Right.
The best thing that he could use to get all of the people on board to going, hey, you know what? We do have to support Ukraine no matter what. These guys are fucking insane.
Yeah.
These are bad child molester ass dictators. Dude, it would have been front page news.
Yep.
They would have abused this well before now had
Yes.
they felt that that was the case. What it is like I said, it's this international money that they do not want to burn.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, I have this buddy that he and I are locked on same page with the Epstein shit. You know, we want the exact same thing. And I sent him something and he rightfully countered, but I sent him, it was a list of all the Democratic senators and government officials and stuff like that. And like down to like the lower levels of people that resigned the day 3 million most recent files dropped. They're gone. They're in the wind. And it was all Democrats. And I was like, bro, check this out. And he's like, I get it, but don't sell me just that shit. It ain't just them, you know? And he's right. Like, I do agree. And it's like, don't let, what I appreciate him for is checking me on that and being like, don't let some right winger just sell you that it's only these people. Where's the list of Republicans that did it? Because I bet you there is one that, you know, certain Republicans that are like, fuck that, you know, I'm out. But again, going back to, you know, the Don Lemon thing, this requires real results. Like somebody who lives in a state that has the death penalty needs to get the death penalty. Somebody of some prominence, you know, like we need results on this because it's unacceptable. And it needs to be shown that it's unacceptable. I don't know, but you're right. Like the Democrats would have front paged that shit in 2022 if what they had, and they've had them forever, if what they had just scorched earth the Republicans, it would have been game over, you know? And I'm actually surprised that,
Like I said, if what they had scorched earth the Russians, they would have done it too.
that too, or any, or, you know, or, well, certainly the Russians at that time, but, you know, or like what, like the Jews, like specifically, right? If they had it in 2023 or like whenever I don't remember what year was October 7th.
2023.
Yeah. So in 2023, same thing, because the left was highly supporting Palestine at that time. I do remember that.
Right. But we also have to remember that that might not necessarily be true because at the same time, the left was calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe because of how much he was supporting Israel.
That's
even
true.
Though
That's true.
and that's actually
Yeah.
also why when you had all these Trump rallies, they couldn't actually organize their lefties to go raid the streets because they're not going to raid the streets for this guy because he's doing shit they don't like. So you had a pretty clear divide within the Democratic Party. And this is the thing. This is what you see on the right too. It's not that the left is for Palestine and the right is for Israel or vice versa. It's that the establishment is for Israel,
Yes.
and the anti-establishment
Good
is
call.
for Palestine generally.
Yeah, it's a real us versus them. Yep. Why are dual citizens in our Senate? Yeah, 100%. You're right. It is definitely a true us versus them. And it's actually a more correct us versus them, which is why, you know, probably my buddy voted Democrat. I voted Republican. That's why we can be in lockstep on that issue. And a libertarian like yourself or, you know, Dave Smith or we are all in lockstep on Epstein, which is, can a tragedy of that magnitude, I guess it can heal a country.
And like I said, let's pay attention to the people who are saying it's not a big deal. people like Ben Shapiro, people
Yes.
like it's all of the people who are like, we need to support Israel no matter what.
Yep.
Those are the people who are saying that Epstein is not a big deal. Don't worry about it. 100% of the time.
Yep. No, 100%. I mean, yeah. Who's that guy that Dave Smith debated and just roasted on stage? The Charlie Kirk.
Alex Bernstein? Or no, Josh Hammer.
Josh Hammer. Holy shit, he's worse than Shapiro. Like, Ben Shapiro at least has a little.
Ben Shapiro.
Yes, dude, Timu Shapiro. That's right. He's so much worse on every issue even than Ben. I've watched a lot of Ben Shapiro. I credit him a great deal to pulling me out of the TDS gutter that I lived in. Not just him, obviously, but kind of that whole like crew over there at his company. What's it called?
Daily Wire.
Daily Wire crew. I mean, I have huge respect for Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is great for kid supremacy. I mean, I could not agree with him more on every single issue about the kids. Yeah, and he's not so bad on Israel, which is nice. I mean, he doesn't drag, he doesn't make a big stink about it, kind of avoids the topic a little bit.
I had a lot more respect for Ben Shapiro before he just really went all the way woke with Israel. And that's kind of the thing, is it's just like, have zero respect for a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And
I don't like the nothing to see here.
He cares about his feelings.
Yeah.
That's what it is right now. He doesn't care about the facts. He cares about his feelings.
Which is funny.
And which is exactly
ironic.
What he's preached his entire career, is to not do that. And like I said, it is the reason why Ben Shapiro is suffering from it too. You can go and look at the revenue and
his numbers are way down.
And he's suffering for it because, like I said, the reason people had respect for him on the right was he was literally like, I will have this debate. I know I'm right, and I'll have this debate with anyone. And then, like I said, there's numerous people that have challenged him to a debate, and he won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of sad to see. I wonder. I want to have faith in
because
him.
they disagree with him.
Well,
now he's telling people.
That's the thing. You play the race card, right? And it's like, dude, it has nothing to do with.
You don't understand. There's this history of oppression, and because there's this history of oppression, we need a safe space.
It's woke. It's 100%
literally what
woke.
he's arguing.
It's literally woke.
Like the entire, like the point that I made to a bunch of my right-wing friends is like wokeism. The whole idea of wokeism is just expanding the Israel mentality to Black Americans, and then eventually
transgenders or whatever
to everybody.
Yeah,
but like it was the same thing. It was like, well, this is a historically oppressed group, so no matter what this group does, we can't criticize it, we can't talk about it, we can't, because it might lead to another one of those situations where we oppress those people really bad again.
Listen,
and anybody who's saying anything about these guys must be wanting to do that old thing that they did back in the day. And it's identical. It is identical.
Yeah. Listen,
and that's why, like I said, it has to be countered.
If white male hate goes on for another decade, we're going to be able to claim that we're oppressed, and we can go woke.
Well, let's actually talk about this. This is something that I've pointed out numerous times to a lot of my friends, is like, if you go and you look at Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler rose up in Germany. It was called the Weimar Republic at the time.
Yeah.
And the Weimar Republic Germany had lost World War I, and it was blamed on Germany. And you had the Weimar Republic was paying reparations on the World War I to the rest of the world. They were being driven broke from these reparations, while the entire world, like, you can find these books, the Nazis themselves disseminated these anti-German propaganda books that were prevalent throughout the world, basically saying, look, they all hate you. This is the way it is. They hate you, and that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And so it bred this. It's the same thing that I'm saying is happening with TDS. It's the same thing that's really happening with a lot of the the Jewish people is you have this like self-perpetuating cycle of
Yeah.
like they have taught you that anytime that anyone criticizes you, it's because they hate you because of who you are. You know, the reason they and like you literally see, you can go look up something called the Evian Conference. And this happened in 1938, and it was a meeting between France, the US, Britain, all a bunch of these allied countries, or what eventually become the allied countries. Some of them weren't in the war yet, but a lot of these countries were like, hey, look, we see these Nuremberg laws, we see how they're treating the Jews, and it's wrong, so let's see how many we can take. And basically, all of the countries except the United States said, we can't take any more. We're already saturated, right? We
Mm.
have way too many Jews. We can't take any more. Hitler comes out right after that and says, I would take and put all of these Jews on a luxury cruise ship and send them to any of these countries, but they won't take them. So
Yeah.
that proves that they don't actually see these as people. They know they're criminals. They know that these are bad people, and that's the reason they won't take them in their countries. They want us to keep them here, but they won't take them themselves. So
Right.
that proves that they themselves don't care about them. And if you go and you look at how Zionists talk about the Palestinians, that is exactly what they say.
Right.
We have tried to
Right.
give
Yeah.
these
Egypt won't take
why
them,
don't you
right?
take them
Yeah.
in your country? They won't take them anywhere else because they know they're terrorists. They're
Mhm.
saying the same thing. These kind of ideas they repeat because of, again, the praxeology.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then as the world freaks out and the UN's like, what the hell's going on? And every humanitarian organization's like, look, this is happening. Everybody's like, yeah, don't you know they hate the Jews? It's anti-Semitism. It's the same thing that Hitler did, where he would literally go, no, it's not that they hate you. Dude, haven't you lived through the last decade since World War One? They don't love the Jews. They hate Germans.
Right.
And
Yeah.
obviously, dude, it's not that they don't care about the Jews. They don't
Right.
care about these gypsies. They don't care about any of these people. They
Yeah.
don't care about what we're doing. They hate that we're German.
Yeah.
They hate that
Yeah.
we're strong. And that they can't pick on us anymore. That's what they hate. And like I said, it is identical because it is an identical, um, what do they call it? What would Jordan Peterson call it? An archetype?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? You have a
Yes.
story that just keeps playing out over and
Right.
over and over and
Right.
over. And that's why it keeps playing out, because we haven't learned what causes these reactions. And like I said, it's dangerous to scapegoat a minority, but it is exceedingly more dangerous to scapegoat a majority. And that is
Yeah.
what we learned from Hitler.
Or what we
And the
should
fact that
have.
we miss that learning,
Yeah.
we miss that history lesson, is what keeps putting us in this problem over and over, because people go, well, you're the people with power, so it's like it's not as bad if you're getting scapegoated, or
Yeah. Right.
you got to accept your privilege and all that. It's like, yeah, but when you piss off inevitably that large group, now you have a large group with a lot of power really putting the boot down on the neck of every
Yeah.
single other party. And
Right.
that is like, we have learned this lesson, but yet we don't learn it. Like it's weird.
Yeah. Well, that's because people didn't learn critical thinking in school. It goes back to that, because you learn whatever version of history your brain wants to tell you based on your home environment and based on, like, you learn the fact. You learn, like, when World War II happened, and you learn that, you know, Hitler lost, and Mussolini, and the Holy Triumvirate, and the Axis of Power, and all this stuff. And you learn these terms, and I can regurgitate them to you, but you don't learn that, like, you don't analyze both sides properly. You don't realize that Hitler had a point. That's not even on the
Well, it's
table
the
to
narrative,
discuss.
but that's
Right.
because it hurts the narrative. We
Right.
have to tell this good versus evil
Yep.
story. And
Yep.
and someone would hear this and say, "Oh, well, you're saying Hitler had a point. That's so wrong. Or you're justifying Hitler. No, I'm not justifying anything. I'm explaining how this stuff happens so we don't keep having it happen.
Right.
And that is the crazy part. Is it's like, you want to sit here and say that phrase is comically made fun of, the whole like Hitler had a point thing, and it's like, but you know who the first real official statement where that came from, saying Hitler had a point? The United Nations, upon its forming, calling it the lesson of Versailles,
Right.
was that the lesson is that you can't put another country under your boot, treat them like shit, and expect everything to go well.
Right. Right.
That was the lesson.
And if we would have learned that lesson, October 7th would never happen. Like, none of this would have even been an issue. And Iran wouldn't be happening right now.
But I would argue they did know that lesson, and they intentionally
Okay. Fair.
There is a symbiotic relationship between Hamas and the right wing of the Israeli government, that every time Hamas attacks the Israeli government, it gets more support for the violent reactions of the right wing of Israel, which causes them to be able to win elections, which in turn they attack, the Gazans, which in turn gives more support for Hamas.
Israel is
you know
the
what I mean?
ice.
It's symbiotic.
Israel is the ice of the Middle East, is what you're saying. Like, that's
but like
kind of
you
what.
go back into history.
Yeah.
Like every time there's been a deal on the table, like a real peace process, maybe we can get a state to go.
I'm aware.
Like both ends calm down. Hamas support dwindles. Left wing support in Israel explodes. So like the reason why both ends kind of have is like because it kind of seems hopeless, and since it's hopeless, let's take as many of the other guys out as possible until it's over.
All I know about Israel and Palestine, or Gaza, or whatever you want to call Muslims and Jews, is that they have been warring my entire fucking life and beyond. And I remember like the moment that I just like gave up on the issue. It was just like, they're just never gonna it's just not gonna happen. Like, it's just never gonna happen, and nobody's gonna move, and it's always gonna be a political football, and it's literally beneficial to everyone involved if they just keep, except the plebeians, if they just keep killing each other. Like, it's just a great political football. It's like literally the best one. It's got everything. It's got classism. It's got religion. It's got, politics. It's such a juicy, like, rub that they'll never let it go. Like, there'll never be a peace deal that lasts longer than 10 years, like, ever. They just can't coexist.
I mean, we like to say that, but I like to hope for difference, especially given British and the Irish used to say the same damn thing.
But how
And
long did
now
that go on?
Yeah. But that's kind of what I'm saying is, the French and the British used to be mortal enemies. The U.S. and the British used to be mortal enemies. The Germany and the U.S. were mortal enemies, and then snapped to perfect friends just about. Same thing with Japan. The thing about all of it has to be, this mentality of it being feudal, I think is a horrible way of looking at any of this kind of stuff. I think the solution has been solved in many other places. It's just that you guys going to have to go to more of a multicultural style of leadership, whether you have a federalism between the two and then the two states within it, or whatever you do. But there has to be some kind of solution that's going to make people, not everybody happy, but it's going to make people basically fine. And, that's really where you have to get to. And like I said, I know this isn't what we wanted to talk about on this one, but I do think that
Okay.
like with the Israel Palestine issue, I think it is all too often blown up into just this is just a religious conflict when, well then explain why the, Palestinian Christians are pretty fed up with Israel as well. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not just because of it's not just because of
No,
Islam.
I just mean,
You know,
I mean,
that's
as
why I say it's
a,
way more political than it's religious. But anytime there's a war, people scream about their God.
as,
I don't
as
know
a
if you paid
football
attention
though,
to us
the
bombing,
religion plays a, aesthetic role, if you will.
well, yeah,
It,
but that's kind of
yeah,
the point I'm making is like religion's going to play an aesthetic role in any war. This is something that like you get into this kind of debate with atheists all the time where they're like all these wars were caused by religion and it's like no, they weren't. It's all these wars were blamed on religion and
yeah,
that is a different thing. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah, agreed. It is different. What? Just a quick history lesson here, refresher, and then we'll get done with it for tonight. But to your point, regale me with tales of the Crusades, which is widely known as one of the most religiously driven sort of wars that was ever peddled to me in school as, religion being the cause of a thing. What manifests destiny and blah, 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 blah. Like, what do you know about the Crusades outside of the religious aspect?
Well, you had an imperialism situation going on where, people were just seeking more territory. When you had a bunch of people from what was then, I think I don't think it was the Ottoman Empire, but it was a bunch of Muslims
Saxony.
coming up from over
Oh,
there,
okay.
yeah, Saladin and all them, and they
Mhm.
came down and like I said, this was more of a conquest kind of game. No different than the Vikings. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And when, they fought these guys off, they were like, hey, these guys have some pretty dope stuff. And so they went and chased them down in there. If you go and you look at the first Crusades, they actually went up and killed a bunch of Jews to begin with. And the reason being is because they owed them a lot of money and they didn't want to pay them. And you can go look into that. It's a real
Interest.
thing. Like I said, a lot of this stuff, it's blamed on religion. Oh, we're just going over here to conquer the Holy Land. Don't pay
Right.
attention to all the gold in the Holy Land that we're bringing back.
Right.
You know what I'm
Don't pay
saying?
attention to the oil we got from Venezuela.
Yeah,
Or do.
it was more,
Trump doesn't give
like
a
I said,
shit.
it
He's
was
like, yeah, we're going
more
to
the
keep it.
excuse than the reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? What religion was it that made the Huns decide to take over all of China? You know what I mean? They didn't have a religion to excuse it on, so they just did it atheistically.
Yeah.
People just, you know, people are imperialistic. They want to take over land and
I
they want to
want
take
I
over
want what he's
territory.
got.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so like, again, the reason or the excuse, and that's just kind of a lot of my mindset on a lot of that kind of stuff is, especially when you're looking at the religion itself and it specifically says not to do the thing that you're doing, like don't steal, don't kill, don't.
Right.
And then you're like, but this religion told me I had to do. I don't know, man. It's specifically telling you not to do that pretty
Yeah.
clearly
Pretty clearly
and
Jesus did
directly.
not want you doing that at all. And then they always want to point, well, he flipped tables. Like, fuck those tables, dude. Like that that's such an overused excuse for violence, you know? He didn't flip the tables and then drop nuclear bombs on everybody. Like a demonstration of angst is not does not like, 1,000 murders make. Like, yeah, I agree. It's like what we talked about last time. Like, don't talk about it, be about it, you know? Like treat treat people with respect and dignity and like everything's going to be fine. But like, you know, people in the cabal couldn't do either and they need to pay. I don't care. I don't care what country they're from. I don't care what politics they support. If you're in the list, You need to pay.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, that was the reasoning for a lot of this kind of stuff. And it is kind of sad too, because it's like back in those days, you had like, here's where the religion kind of comes in. Like in Christianity, which you had these Christian kings, you're not allowed to charge interest because it's usury,
Right.
right?
I remember
But
hearing
the
about
Jews,
this.
and so they would have a Jew that would be part of the royal court called a court Jew. And that was a great job while it lasted until you owed so much money, or you like they owed you so much money that they ended up killing you. And that is like literally what ended up happening all over the place. It was the impetus for a lot of pogroms. It was, it was just like, hey, we borrowed way too much money from these people that we can't pay back.
Let's just
And
kill
what
them.
they're doing is a sin anyway. So let's kill them.
So it's interesting. I've read somewhere that the Jewish people have been driven out of like hundreds of countries over over history.
And yeah, and it's a mix of that. It's also a mix of revolutionary activity. But like
Mhm.
the revolutionary activity, again, if you have pogroms, if you have the citizens of a country running into your village and killing all the Jews,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and then there's another guy saying, "Hey, I want to overthrow the guy in charge." You're joining that revolution.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so,
Yes.
like, I think that there's this anti-Semitism that comes again from not understanding very simple praxeology.
Yeah.
People confronted with certain circumstances end up in those circumstances. What's kind of interesting is you can actually go and look into like Palestinians and like a lot of their thought and their anarchic, a lot of the same patterns you see in Palestinians for the same reason. You have a diaspora population that's getting kicked from country to country to country, and so like, yeah, you get a lot of those same, ideas starting to pop out and show their face. What about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising? As you got a bunch of Jews who are being treated horribly by the
Mhm.
Nazis, and they rise up and start killing the fuck out of them. Good.
Yeah.
That's what we all say, right?
Mm.
And so like there is something to like kind of understanding that like people react to the circumstances that they're in. And if like I said before, is like I don't believe in terrorism. I believe all that stuff is wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
But if it was my kid that got blown up in a drone strike, you know what I
Be pretty
mean?
fucking pissed
Like
off.
I don't know that I would be able to hold myself into going, well, we can only go after military targets.
Right.
This is a civilian. No, I'm anything with your flag on it, I'm blowing up.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I
Yeah. I
kind of
agree.
get it. Like if you have a little bit of empathy and a little bit of praxeology, we all wish that everybody did things the best and most moral way, but that's not how the world works,
Nope.
And
Yeah.
so when we're looking at these people with almost no power and no way of doing it, it's like you're basically telling them to lay there and take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, and that's why you end up with groups like Hamas and not some kind of peaceful protest at the border or something like that. It's because you're kind of leaving them with that option and that option alone.
Yeah. You know, what do you expect to happen if you brutally murder children and women of, a set group of people? Like, what do you expect the next generation, the ones that survive, that have every single same vested interest in being fruitful on this planet that you do? What do you expect those kids that saw their parents die to become? Do you think they're going to be like, it wasn't you? It's the same thing like why people think that like all white guys are racist or whatever. It's like, it wasn't me. I wasn't there. But like, there's a stigma now, and we have to deal with that a little bit. But at the same time, like, what do you what do you expect to happen if you teach an entire generation of white males that
I know it's
they're
a
evil?
microcosm, but like, say you had a really old, elderly black man,
Yeah.
and he like grew up while the
In
civil rights movement's
Jim
happening.
Crow South. Yeah.
He's watching white people just beat the shit out of black
Right.
people for literally just being black.
Yep.
Literally just for that.
Yep.
And it's just like, and then he grows up and he's, he's running around and he's like, you know what? I don't trust white people. It's like, you know what? I don't blame you.
Yeah. I think that's where most I think that's where most of our generation was able to meet black people at the right intersection of that understanding. Like, I think we've blown through the stop sign for sure. But like when we were in our 20s and we learned about that stuff, and I learned about it in high school because, like I said, I had a pretty good history teacher. And, we watched Mississippi burning and we talked about Malcolm and we talked about his early extremist days. And like, you and I have talked about this a little bit on our first pod together. But like, I knew the roots of all of the hatred. And so I was able to meet every person of, every black person I ever met in my life at that juncture. And the difference between me and like, say, a current liberal, if you will, of a similar age, is that my understanding of the situation and my treatment of people that I met in my life that are black was understood as very genuine. You know what I mean? And you have the same thing, I would imagine. You grew up in a black neighborhood and, your kids are mixed race and all that, stuff that like we just see as normal now. Like, that's not a weird thing. And we were able to meet the black people of our generation at a very real place that is an understanding that I'm not them, but I understand why you feel that way. And I'm not doing work on you to make you trust all white people. I'm just here at this party and I think you're cool. And let's like slam a couple of beers and like talk about sports, like that was a real place.
It's also something to remember too, is it's just like, again, we didn't get there overnight, and I
No.
don't think that would happen with a Palestinian Israeli situation either. I do think there's going to be of both ends going, well, I just don't fucking trust you for a while. Like, that's going to be the case. It's going to be the case, and but the thing about it is I think Adar Weinreb once said the best way it's ever been said. He's like, yes, some people will probably die in the pursuit of peace, but people are dying in the pursuit of war now, and they always die in the pursuit of war. So why not have people die in a way that actually means something towards peace?
Damn. That's heavy. That's really good. I like that. And yeah,
and it's like, it's
totally.
not to say that everything will end overnight, but we do have to start walking
Somewhere.
back from it. And
Yes.
if you don't, it's just going to keep blowing up until one side is completely gone and over and genocided. Like, you're literally building yourself into a corner where you have to genocide the other end, or else there is no solution because you've done pissed them off too much. You can't live with these people that you've pissed off.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I like, that's exactly right. Like, you're right. That is cause for hope. I don't mean to sound like totally hopeless. It's just really hard when you spend your whole life like hearing about one particular conflict and it never goes away. But like, that doesn't mean that like when my kids are grown, that it's not solved, by the time they're my age or whatever. And there'll be some other problem for them to podcast about. But,
Take the white pill.
yeah, I mean, I do think you're right. Like, we did get to a place in about 2001 where black and white relation relations were so good. Like it was just literal racial utopia was achieved. People missed the boat. Like you missed it because sorry for the bad analogy. People missed like that whole like actual love and unity and acceptance and appreciation and playful humor, which we've talked about before, and like nobody being offended. And like we're past this. Like we're not going to do this. Our ancestors did this. We're not going to do this with each other. I'm going to treat you as a human being, and I'm going to respect that you probably are coming from something similar to me, and like we're going to be fine. And so we did it. We've done it with the British. I have an English friend who's a guitar player that I, had on our podcast, our guitar podcast, Only Frets at 11 Pacific on Thursdays, if anybody's interested. But like, and we were talking about there's like this kindred, almost like brotherhood with the English, now. But as you rightfully pointed out, shit didn't exist for like hundreds of years, It's like took a long time.
And it was a lot of terrorism too.
It
People
was.
blowing
I
each
know.
other up.
A lot of shit, dude. And so, yeah, you're
Bombings of
right.
cities and school buses, and
But
like I said, it can happen.
Yeah.
But it can't happen as long as people say it can't happen. And that was the problem with the Irish, and that was the problem with the Native Americans, and that was the problem with, African Americans. It can't happen so long as you say it can't happen.
And to be
Like,
fair, I am
you
Irish.
have to start doing the work.
Yeah. To be fair, I am Irish, and I want to like submit myself to something being wrong and living with it that way. So that is my nature, and my heritage. And so it was like, yeah, they're just always going to hate us, or like, yeah, they're just always going to fight each other. So that is kind of my hindrance genealogically. But
And how could we prove that was not the case at the time, even, right?
Right,
We had
right.
Immigrants coming from Britain and immigrants coming from Ireland. And not to say it was perfectly getting along, but after what, 10, 15 years in America, they were fine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can see this in New York City currently with Israelis and Palestinians, people from Israel and from Palestine living in like Manhattan or the Bronx or Brooklyn.
Yep.
Right
Just
next to each other.
bodegas right across the street. Just like Don't Mess with the Zohan, that Adam Sandler movie.
Exactly. And that's real.
Nobody cares.
And that's what I'm saying. It's literally the second you get over there, though, all of a sudden. And that's why I say it's the politics.
Yeah.
It's not
the programming.
It's
You're
not the
told
religion,
that you
it's the
have to
politics.
care. Yeah. Yes. Well, I think we solved that issue.
Well, now we can have world peace.
Yep. We can have world peace and no pedophiles running free and owning islands. And
Oh, how the hell did he afford said island? It's like, again, like, that is just so crazy that people are trying to act like he just came out of nowhere. And no, this is what happens in America is a guy who drops out of college, becomes a financial expert and guru.
The American dream.
Multi-billion dollar, hedge funds for, and, people like Larry Ellison just sign over power of attorney to all of their assets and estates and companies and all that. Jeffrey Epstein run it himself because that's how you do things.
Speaking of which,
you make it to that level of financial acumen by giving away the rights to your money every chance you get.
Isn't who's the Facebook kid guy
Mark
now?
Zuckerberg.
Isn't that almost exactly an Epstein situation? He like dropped out of college.
With Zuckerberg and so there's a handful of them that it's a little less crazy. Like with Zuckerberg was actually a nerd. He actually is. And watch him in Congress giving a speech.
Oh, yeah.
That man is an actual legitimate nerd that came up with something that other people didn't come up with.
That's probably
You
true.
know what I mean?
That's
he
fair.
can't even drink water normally. That man is insanely autistic.
Yes. Yes.
You can tell he's worked on it for sure. You know, he's probably had somebody who is an expert in public image and all that. Like, if you watch him on, I think, like, the latest Joe Rogan Experience would be a good episode to, like, see the difference between him and last time you see him. He's worked on it for sure, but the
So
dude's
we
just
can
weird.
say that the Jesse Eisenberg movie is fairly accurate.
Yeah, I would argue that's probably really close to accurate in, like, his like mentality and like that whole idea of like especially the quote from that movie where he's like, "You had an idea, I had a better one." Like that
Yeah.
sounds like a Mark Zuckerberg ass quote right
Okay.
there. Just a weird ass kid that figured some shit out. And like I said, that's not to say there haven't been some influence since then.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
think for sure since
Definitely.
then. But
Definitely.
like, do I think he was set up from the start to take over and do this thing?
He
No,
wasn't
I don't think
handpicked.
so.
He wasn't handpicked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he built it and then they were like, "Hey, would you want to be part of this?" And he was like, "Yeah, please don't take my company from me."
Right. Yeah. That's funny. Well, good. The American dream's not all the way dead.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's possible. I think it's really, really, really hard though. And I think
It
that's
is.
sad. It really is, especially
Yeah.
for our kids. That's something we have to work on is figuring out how to really address the debasement. Maybe we'll do our next episode on debasement of the US currency and
Yeah.
how like this is making it where our kids can't get homes.
I mean, yeah, that would be a great episode because I definitely have like thoughts on that. And we're trying to raise a family that's comfortable together for that very reason. You know what I mean? It's like you don't ever have to move out if you don't want.
We're gonna have to move back to the old manor style thing where you have
Right.
like 5 generations in one home.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, luckily, my parents have a very large house. So someday when that gets left to the family, I can, you know, buy it at a discount from my siblings if I wish to. But it's like, it's getting there. It is getting there, like for sure. Like we might have my sister and Brad and everybody all on that property with tiny homes and stuff like that at some point. Like it's not that far fetched to think about, and it might be the only move at some point. So I do think that would be a good talk. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that one next. So tune in next time, guys, and you'll see the beauty.